everybody, and welcome back to the Socks Needs Help YouTube channel. It's been a while since we've done our last and only video essay, so over the past 2 months I've been writing this on and off. It's taken me a lot more long time because, that's not a word, whatever. It's taken me a lot longer because it's a lot longer video, or it might be not a longer video, but it was a lot harder to make. But, so, you know, if you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. So I'm gonna start reading my script now. I'm very good at this. So, previously, I made a video about making up some new items for Risk of Rain 2. My reasoning for making the new items in that video was Risk of Rain didn't have enough items and that it needed more, but let's be real here, there are enough items in Risk of Rain 2, and I was just having fun. On the other hand, abilities for the various characters are less abundant than I would like, so on today's video, I'm going to make a new passive, primary, secondary, utility, and special ability for all of the Risk of Rain characters and its DLC's main cast. I say main cast as if there's a secondary, whatever. Fair warning before we start as well, you're going to have to visualize a lot of these ideas, because I don't have the art skills to draw them out, and I don't have the coding skills to mod them into the game, though if there's any modders watching, please, I would be so happy. Let's start with Commando, the baseline character of the game that's just a blank canvas waiting to be hit multiple times with a paintball gun. The new passive for Commando is Hustle. After sprinting for 3 seconds, increase your movement speed by 20%. This passive, I think, would make a lot of sense for Commando's high mobility and pacing between when you need to move and when you need to shoot. Because Commando is one of the 2 characters you get immediate access to when you first start playing Risk of Rain, I wanted to make his abilities intuitive. For a new primary, High Caliber, Agile, shoot your enemies for 250% damage every 0.8 seconds, and the bullet would have a proc coefficient of 1. The proc coefficients, by the way, aren't exact. I'm not perfect with them. Some of them might be too strong, underpowered. I don't understand them enough to do perfect, so I don't know. Commando's base game primary is very simple and can feel a little mundane at times, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I feel this new primary idea would add a new dynamic to Commando that would make each shot feel a little more important rather than supporting a sort of spray and pray style or just a randomly shoot all the enemies whenever style. His new secondary was surprisingly hard to come up with, but the niche I wanted to fill with the Commando was a long-range option for that slot. Phase Round Mark II. Fire a piercing hit-scan bullet that deals 500% damage, cooldown of 5 seconds, and the bullet has a proc coefficient of 1. I'd like to imagine for this attack, the animation would involve Commando putting his 2 guns together, and the shot would leave like a lingering tracer trail behind it, just to make it feel that much stronger. You'd choose this over the phase round just if you wanted something to spam, but it wouldn't have that added bit where it does more damage if it pierces more enemies. For you Paladins players, by the way, it would look how Lex's ultimate does. I'm gonna make a lot of Paladins references in this video, so don't judge me. Commando's existing utility options are, and I'm gonna be honest, boring. They both lack personality, and I think my solution could really spice up your runs. Advanced Training. Upon activation, receive plus 20% movement speed, plus 2% max health regeneration, and plus 50% damage for 10 seconds, cooldown of 25 seconds. This utility would offer an alternative to the short bursts of movement the existing options give you, as well as give you a better tool for sustain when it comes to boss fights. And finally, Commando Special. Concussive Blast. This one is very niche, but I still like the shenanigans you could pull off with it. Concussive Blast. Stunning. Fire a short-range concussive blast that deals 150% damage. Can store up to 3 charges, cooldown of 5 seconds, and the blast has a proc coefficient of 1. Huntress! On to Huntress, my beloved. I used to main her, but fun fact, when I started playing this game because my friends told me to, they told me to play Huntress exclusively because she was easy. I say that with quotation marks. I have no idea what they were talking about. One of the main parts of Huntress that I really enjoy is her flow and how she feels when you play her. She's very fluid. Huntress's abilities all mesh together to feel very fluid, and I don't want you to lose that while creating new ones. Her new passive is Shatter. Critical hits grant a stacking debuff of Shatter on enemies that causes them to deal 0.5% self-damage when they attack. Shatter caps at 100 stacks and cannot kill enemies, instead leaving them at 1 HP. This debuff wouldn't be particularly strong, but it would help Huntress in situations where she needs to deal with multiple enemies at once. I also think it would be cool if some enemies had this, maybe give it to Mithrix or something. It would just be an interesting add-on to his abilities. Conversely, both of Huntress's primary fires are already relatively fast, so my new idea is Punch. Fire a large arrow every 1 second that deals 300% damage. Damage scales with critical strike chance above 100%, and the arrow would have a proc coefficient of 1. I like this new option because it would be niche. Right now the choices between Huntress's primaries are basically up to how well you play the character, but overall they're similar enough that they don't really, differ all that much. So Punch adds that little extra. The only thing I wanted when creating Huntress's new secondary was explosions. I don't really know why I wanted explosions, but I did, and here's where we are. Explosive Arrow. After a brief animation, fire an arrow that roots lighter enemies and deals 100% damage. After 3 seconds, the arrow explodes for 600% damage in a 10-meter radius. Cooldown of 7 seconds. The arrow has a proc coefficient of 1, like when it hits someone, and then the explosion has a proc coefficient of 0.5. This wouldn't add a whole lot to her personality as a character, but I think it would add some flavor and flair that I think she just needs when it comes to her secondary. I like Laser Glaive, but it could be better. A new utility for Huntress would be Phase Jump. Blink 20 meters in the air, then gain Slow Fall for 3 seconds. Cooldown of 6 seconds. This ability was inspired by Artificer's Slow Fall passive, but would be considerably weaker. I think it would be a nice breather to Huntress's already fast-paced gameplay, but wouldn't be as restricting as her existing abilities are, where they're just like, throw and go. Throw and go. That's a phrase now. And lastly for Huntress, a new special ability would be True Strike. Lock your movement and charge a piercing arrow that deals 1200% damage. This arrow cannot critical hit the first enemy it hits, but has guaranteed critical strikes on any enemy it hits after the first with 200% increased critical damage. Cooldown of 10 seconds. The arrow has a proc coefficient of 1, and any enemy it hits after any pierced arrow hits also has a proc coefficient of 1. Overall, I think the amount of flavor added with these new abilities makes a good meal, and I am happy with them as a whole. Bandit is likely one of my least played characters in Risk of Rain 2, since I don't like his flow, I guess. Bandit is our first survivor with a pre-existing passive, so in the interest of time, we'll skip straight to the abilities. A new primary for him would be the Blunderbuss. Fire a shotgun blast that deals 20 times 50% damage with a large spread. Pellets would have a proc coefficient of 0.05 per pellet. Conversely to his existing 2 primaries, I think this would have only 1 heavy shot in between reloads. This new ability would support his get in and get out playstyle heavily by having a very strong burst that was a little slower than his other options. I just think he needs that big hit, I don't know. I wanted his new secondary to also be a knife-related one, so I give you Dagger Barrage. After a short animation, holster your rifle and rapidly throw 8 daggers for 8 times 80% damage. Critical strikes also cause hemorrhaging. Cooldown of 8 seconds, and the daggers each have a proc coefficient of 3. Or, not 3, no! 0.3. A proc coefficient of 3 would be ridiculous. This one might take me out of the flow a bit when I play him, but I still like the idea of throwing a bunch of knives like some murder hobo street magician. What if you had Smoke Bomb, but it was stationary? I'm not as confident in this one as I am the others, but this is Bandit's new utility ability. Haze. Throw a smoke bomb in an arc in front of you that leaves a 20-meter radius AoE that grants all allies invisibility. Attacking while in this area will not reveal you. Cooldown of 8 seconds. This would allow Bandit to stay in the fight a little longer and would contrast his existing ability, which is really only used for running away. Sticking on theme as well, Bandit's new special ability is also connected to his revolver. Last Resort. Rapidly fan the hammer of your revolver for 200% damage per charge. Can hold up to 6 charges. Cooldown 3 seconds per charge. And each bullet would have a proc coefficient of 0.8. I imagine this would work well and be kind of funny with multiple stacks of lysate cells, but overall, I think it would just be fun to dump into the forehead of some like stone titan or something. I don't know. Anything would be fun. I like the idea of in Overwatch when you shoot more than 6 enemies with Cassidy's ultimate, he still shoots more than 6 bullets, even though he only has 6 bullets in his gun. So I wouldn't think about it too hard, but that's how it would work. MUL-T is one of, if not the most versatile characters in the game. He really reaches every playstyle you could want, except for maybe the hypermobile ones. Coming up with new abilities for him was tiresome because of this, but I powered through it. MUL-T's new passive, which I could have sworn he had one, but no, he doesn't, is Carbon Fiber. Carrying any equipment grants 30 armor. It's simple, yeah, but I think it fits him and would synergize with his retool ability a little well. As far as I'm concerned, MUL-T already has every primary, but one weapon he doesn't have is a welder, and as his weapons are all workshop warehouse related, we don't have to think about the grenade launcher, it's workshop warehouse related, I swear. This new ability would at least add to the theme. Laser Welder. Burning. Laser nearby enemies for 200% damage per second, and applying 20% slow. The laser would have a proc coefficient of 0.5 every second. This could be a fun melee alternative to Power Saw, and would be even funnier if you could somehow weld enemies like together. I could not think of a way to make that work though. His new secondary is Demolition. Lay down a satchel of bombs in front of you. Refiring this ability detonates the satchel for 1500% damage. Cooldown of 12 seconds. The satchel has a proc coefficient of 1. MUL-T's existing secondary is kind of icky and lame and I hate it, but my new cool secondary is awesome. And I think it would make dealing with larger enemies or larger groups of enemies much easier. A more lively alternative to MUL-T's existing utility is Reposition Heavy. Leap forward in an arc with 200 increased armor. Upon landing, slam down for 500% damage. Cooldown 7 seconds. Slam has a proc coefficient of 1. This would have increased jump height and would give MUL-T some vertical movement he desperately lacks. And finally, MUL-T's new special ability is Reconstruct. After a 1.5 second animation, equip every available tool in MUL-T's arsenal, as well as your equipment, and fire them all, dealing 5000% damage over 30 seconds. Cooldown of 15 seconds, and the entire arsenal combined has a proc coefficient of 0.5 per second. If anyone plays Paladins, this is like Ruckus's Hexafire ultimate. Yeah, that's right, we did another Paladins reference. But I imagine this one would be really funny to see all of MUL-T's weapons pop out of his arms all at once and fire like some sort of alien. Engineer was probably the most fun of the characters to make up items for, and I'm happy where we landed. His first new ability is his passive, which might be woefully underpowered, but I don't really care, it fits him. High-tech armor. For every mechanical ally on your team, gain 5 armor. It's simple, sure, but I want to support a playstyle of having a healthy amount of friends, all supported by your 500 bunkuses. Literally anything would have been better than Engineer's current primary fire, but I wanted to get at least a little creative. My solution? Burst canisters. Fire mid-range missile every 0.6 seconds that explodes into shrapnel at 40 meters or on contact with an enemy, dealing 20 times 20% damage. The shrapnel each has a proc coefficient of 0.05 per piece of shrapnel. Engineer's secondary options also suck, but, you know, I think I fixed it. Shock mines. Place a mine that, after a 1-second charge-up time, creates a 10-meter radius area of effect that stuns non-boss enemies and deals 700% damage over 4 seconds. Cooldown of 8 seconds. The mine has a proc coefficient of 0.2 per second. Unlike his other 2 existing mines, you would have no amount of maximum mines you could have out at once. This would make for a fun challenge as well by having like an only shock mines run or something like that. This next one, the utility, is really out there, but I think it could still make for a very interesting ability. Prepare yourself though, cause it's a lot of words. Portable Forge. Place a forge that creates an item once every minute. The rarity of this item is split 79, 20, 1% for white, green, and red items respectively, and is affected by luck. The forge can only hold 1 item at a time and will not create a new item if the previous item is still in the forge. The first item is created 20 seconds after the activation. The forge will be directly attacked by non-boss enemies if they are closer to it than you. Only 1 forge may be placed per level, so if it's destroyed, it's done for that level. That's a lot of words, I know, but it still sounds like an interesting ability. for really anyone. It would be fun to make it so that the Forge gives you items faster, like maybe via attack speed or something, but for now I think it's in a good spot. Lastly, Engineer's new special ability, which of course had to be a turret, is the TR-71 Medic Turret. Place a mobile turret that inherits all your items. The turret will latch on to the nearest low health ally and heal them for 5% max HP per second. If the target is full health, the medic turret will instead grant 20 armor. Upon its destruction, the TR-71 medic turret will release a healing core that will heal all allies for 40% max HP and enemies for 10% max HP after a short animation. Cooldown of 30 seconds. I think a logbook entry for this ability would have you find that it heals through a healing core that it trapped inside of it. I don't know why I want that, but I do. Artificer probably has the largest horizons possible for any new abilities. She already has the elemental theme going for her, so I basically had endless options. Instead, I chose to stick with one theme, Ice. Ice Bolt. Fire a shard of ice that slows enemies for 20% and deals 300% damage. Can hold up to 4. The Ice Bolt would have a proc coefficient of 1. Short and sweet, but it fits my narrative, and that's all I care about. Artificer's new secondary is fun, and side note, I wanted all of her abilities to sound like they were something you'd see in an episode of Avatar, so Fragment Blast, slowing. Charge up to 10 shards of ice over 3 seconds and fire them in a 30-degree horizontal cone in front of you, dealing 10 times 120% damage. Cooldown of 8 seconds. Each ice fragment would have a proc coefficient of 0.5. Artificer has only one existing utility, which I always found disappointing. It's just so niche and specific, and she needed a new one that was easier to use. My proposal is this: Overheat, Burning. Blast forward 30 meters in an explosion that deals 600% damage. Cooldown of 8 seconds. And the explosion would have a proc coefficient of 1. It's simple, but more importantly it provides another movement option that you could combine with Ion Surge. Also, I know I said the theme was ice, but Snap Freeze is already ice, so whatever. Anyways, let's finish Artificer with her new special, Blizzard. Target a 30-meter diameter area that slows enemies and deals 50% damage every 0.2 seconds for 5 seconds. Cooldown of 16 seconds. The Blizzard has a proc coefficient of 0.2 per second. The targeting of this would work the same as Snap Freeze, where you press and hold the special ability button to aim it and then release it to activate it. It might be a little strong or a little weak, I don't know. It just sounds fun. And now we're on to Mercenary, which, and I'm sorry to any Merc mains watching, is my least favorite survivor. Because of this, we're gonna go through his abilities pretty quickly. Laser Dagger. Slash 3 times in front of you for 3 times 100% damage every 0.65 seconds. Killing blows with the dagger makes the next burst deal 50% more damage per slash. The damage boost resets after 4 seconds. The Laser Dagger has a proc coefficient of 0.4 per slash. This new primary for Mercenary also allows for a little bit more strategy to go into playing the character. Instead of slicing through huge groups of enemies, you now have to be a little more methodical with which enemies you attack first to maximize your damage when it matters. More single target damage over area damage. His new secondary aligns with the existing ones in that it allows more movement along with some nice damage. Laser Burst. Teleport 20 meters in front of you and slash in a 15-meter radius for 350% damage. Cooldown of 8 seconds. Slash has a proc coefficient of 1. Ignore the mistake in this image. Originally the cooldown said 16, but I was way too lazy to fix it, so here we are. I spent like 7 consecutive hours making these stills, so, you know, give me a break. This would provide an alternative movement ability that, regardless of if he needed it, would still be a fun way to bounce around the map with. Merc's utilities are both dashes, and I didn't want to stray from that theme. Targeted Assault. Target an enemy and teleport in front of them, dealing 450% damage and exposing them for 2 seconds. Cooldown of 16 seconds. Teleport has a proc coefficient of 1. For those who know Vatu from Paladin's teleport ability, this would be like that. This is our last Paladin's reference. I know there have been 3. Sue me. And finally, Mercenary Special, Grinding Assault. Fire a vertical slash 40 meters in front of you that deals 500% damage and leaves a trail of slashes dealing 8 times 60% damage that lasts 4 seconds. Cooldown of 8 seconds. The large slash has a proc coefficient of 1, and the slash trail would have a proc coefficient of 0.2 per second. When I said there would be a lot of mental images you would have to make for this video, I wasn't lying. but luckily this is one of the greatest defenders. Rex, baby! I love my little plant guy, my little goofster, my little Scroimbloid. I love him. Full honesty, full transparency, I had to rewrite this script because I forgot Rex didn't have a passive, so here we are. Directive, Harvest. 5% of your healing when full health is converted into Temporary Barrier. It's a fine passive, and that's all I have to say about it. Rex's primary ability has always been a little underwhelming to me. I feel like it could definitely have a new alternative that delivers a heavier impact, an ability that makes your shots count just that little bit more. Seed Impact. Piercing. Charge up a heavy shot over 5 seconds with a total of 1200% damage, which automatically fires at the end of the charge time. The seed would have a proc coefficient of 1. To clarify something, this shot would work similar to Engineer's current primary, except for the automatic firing thing. If you just left click once, it would fire this one little small shot that deals 50% damage, that charges up to 1200% damage if you were to hold left click for the 5 seconds. This new secondary for Rex is, I think, my favorite ability that I came up with for this video. It's up there. It's definitely up there. Directive, Grapple. Fire a chain of vines that latches onto an enemy, rooting them, and dealing 50% damage per 0.5 seconds, and heal for 0.5% maximum health per 0.5 seconds. While grappled, you cannot move more than 30 meters away from the target. This ability can be refired to sever the connection. Cooldown of 8 seconds, and the seed has a proc coefficient of 0.1 per 0.5 seconds you're attached. I just think this would be so cool, and I'm not really sure why. I like the idea of a huge teleporter boss fight where you attach to the boss and just lay into it with all of your abilities while swinging around it. I think it would be fun. Rex's new utility is actually fun. I might actually play it if it had this. Directive, Launch. Rapidly fire multiple seeds behind you and propel yourself forward, dealing 8 times 100% damage over 4 seconds. Cooldown of 7 seconds, and each of the seeds would have a proc coefficient of 0.5 per seed. The reasoning for the damage being so high is that it would be kinda hard to hit because they'd be behind you, so... Lastly, here's Rex's new special ability, which I made sure to follow the lifesteal theme of his other abilities. Infectious Spores. Target a 30-meter diameter area and fire a cloud of spores that blinds and slows enemies, dealing 50% damage every 0.75 seconds for 4 seconds. If an enemy dies while in the cloud's duration is extended by 1 second. While standing in this area, the Spore Cloud instead deals 80% damage and heals you for 0.5% maximum health every 0.75 seconds. The cooldown starts once the cloud disperses. Cooldown of 16 seconds. The Spore Cloud would have a proc coefficient of 0.2 every 0.75 seconds. I like this because the Spore Cloud could theoretically go on forever if enemies kept dying in it. The damage and self-healing is low, but this could be very useful to have in a teleport fight or the holdout zone. Next up, for our new abilities, is Loader. I hardly know. Pummel. Punch in front of you for 400% damage every 1 second. Punch has a proc coefficient of 1. The main difference with this primary is that it would be a forward attack similar to Rex's utility ability, as well as it would be stronger and slower than her existing swings. My new proposed secondary for Loader is Electric Fist. Fire your gauntlet forward, dealing 20% damage every 0.5 seconds if connected to an enemy, and pulling you to your target. Cooldown of 5 seconds. The gauntlet has a proc coefficient of 0.2 every 0.5 seconds it's attached to an enemy. I think this would be a really fun ability to swing around a boss with. Like, imagine latching onto a Beetle Queen and just orbiting her while delivering just a light electroshock therapy. Yep. I'm so tired recording this, goddamn. I think this would be a really funny ability to swing around a boss with. Like, imagine latching onto a Beetle Queen and just orbiting her while delivering light electroshock therapy. Loader is all about that movement, so her new utility ability is this. Charged Uppercut. Charge an uppercut for 3 seconds that raises you 20 meters upwards. Enemies caught in the hit will be dealt 3 times 200 to 500% damage. Cooldown of 5 seconds. Uppercut has a proc coefficient of 0.8 per hit. I designed this ability after the Mortal Kombat style uppercuts, where it's like a multi-hit attack that specifically pauses the animation every single time you hit them. I feel that would emphasize this ability's power if it just paused every time you hit them. I don't know, it'd be fun. And lastly for Loader is her new special ability, Employee Benefits. Upon killing an enemy, gain a stack of productivity, or 3 stacks for killing a boss. Upon activation, perform a heavy punch in front of you that deals 120% damage per stack of productivity. You must have at least one stack of productivity to use this ability, and the stacks reset to 0 upon using the ability or after every level. Cooldown of 10 seconds, and the heavy punch has a proc coefficient of 1. I had fun with this ability in case it wasn't obvious. I used to be a loader main, so you know, it was fitting that I gave her some really fun abilities, and I think I succeeded with that. Acrid, the jelly dog creature. New primary for the good boy. Acid Pool. Spit an arced projectile that deals 140% damage. If the shot hits the ground, it creates a 5 diameter pool of acid that lasts 4 seconds and deals 25% damage per 0.3 seconds. Spit would have a proc coefficient of 1, and the acid pool would have a proc coefficient of 0.3 per second. There weren't a lot of options I could have gone with for Acrid's new primary, but I think where I ended up worked out. Acrid's new secondary is Ravenous Slash. Poisonous, heavy, regenerative. After a short animation, violently slash in front of you for 600% damage. Cooldown of 5 seconds. Slash has a proc coefficient of 1. It really seems like my answer to a lot of these is just big swing, or big hit, or big boom, and I'm fine with that, okay? Let me have this. Acrid's new utility is also a big jump, just like his other two options. Caustic Grapple. Poisonous. Leap into the air and latch onto an enemy. When attached, repeatedly bite the target, with primary fire dealing 50% damage. The grapple will be severed automatically after 5 seconds. Cooldown of 10 seconds, and each bite would have a proc coefficient of 0.8. It should be noted that the fastest you could bite a target is 4 times per second, if you could click that fast, for a maximum of 1000% damage. Finally, Acrid's new ability for his special, Rage. Agile. Poisonous. Rapidly slash in front of you for 10 times 80% damage. Cooldown of 8 seconds. Slashes would have a proc coefficient of 0.1 per slash. Next up on the chopping block, and the last survivor in the original base game, Captain. Captain's new primary is interesting. Vulcan Assault. Fire a burst of bullets for 5 times 100% damage. Charging the ability increases the amount of shots you shoot to a maximum of 15. Bullets each have a proc coefficient of 1 per bullet. Simple, but I think it provides a more versatile alternative to the shotgun that I think would be a little more spammable and a little less aim dependent. Literally anything would have been better than Captain's existing secondary, so here's my proposal. Advanced Targeting. Call on the UES Safe Travels to lock onto an enemy, rooting them and making all attacks against them deal guaranteed critical strikes for 4.5 seconds, cooldown of 7 seconds. Maybe it's not revolutionary, but this new ability is really fun in my eyes. It's actually inspired by a modded item called the Faulty Spotter that does a similar thing with the guaranteed crits against a single enemy, and I really like that. I decided to have a really fun time with Captain's new utility ability. OGM 72 Rapture Strike. Request a kinetic strike from the UES Safe Travels. After a 6-second charge time, the strike lands and deals a dissipating area of effect for 10,000, 7,500, 4,500, and 1,000% damage in a 10, 25, 35, and 50 meter radius area. Cooldown of 15 seconds once it finishes. The shockwaves would have different proc coefficients as well per their area, with 2, 1, 0.6, and 0.2 respectively. The separate damage values would look like this, and would explode out from the ground one after another. Maybe this would be a little overpowered, but I don't really care. I like it, and therefore it's in my video. Captain's last new ability is his special, for which I will be giving him a new pylon option that you can also use to ignore the resupply beacon with. Beacon damage. Call down an irradiating beacon that applies 1 stack of radiation every 0.75 seconds to all enemies in its area of effect. Each stack of radiation deals 40% damage every 3 seconds and lasts 20 seconds per stack. I just like this one. Maybe it's too strong, maybe it's too weak, I don't really know, but what matters is it's fun. 2 more survivors to go. Hang in there, and we're on to our first DLC survivor here with Railgunner. The SIPPG or SIPG service pistol. Holster your railgun and fire your backup service pistol for 150% damage. The pistol fires 3 times per second. The bullets each have a proc coefficient of 1. This ability, unlike her active primary, would not home in on enemies and would instead offer a more mid to long range option. Also, SIPG stands for Standard Issue Pew Pew Gun. Railgunner's new secondary works off of a cooldown system instead of a reload like her current main one does, because I don't like the reload, it's weird and clunky. The LI-87 Heavy Sniper. Activate your long-range scope that highlights enemy weak points. Fire a 2500% damage piercing shot. Cooldown of 8 seconds. The sniper has a proc coefficient of 1. I don't really know where I was going with this, but yeah, here it is. I chose LI-78 for its name because when you write it out and italicize it, it kind of looks like a plague doctor. Overall though, I'm not really proud with this ability. I am on page 12 of this script. Actually, wait. No, I'm on page 22 of the script. Why did I write 12? That's how you know how tired I am. So cut me some slack here, please. Railgunner's utility abilities have always been the runt of her ability litter, so I think this new proposal will add more fun, but more importantly, an easier movement option to use. Unorthodox use. Fire your railgun straight down for an 800% damage shot. This shot propels you upwards for 10 meters. Cooldown of 8 seconds, and the sniper shot would have a proc coefficient of 1. If anyone here has seen Ruby, think of how Ruby uses her sniper rifle to sort of bounce midair using the recoil. The same principle applies here. And lastly, Railgunner's new special ability is Shatter Charge. After a 2-second charge time, fire a Shatter Charge from your railgun that deals 4000% damage in a large explosion. Cooldown of 20 seconds. The Shatter Charge is a proc coefficient of 1. Big boom is all I had going for me, and for you Ultra Kill fans, it was inspired by the railgun in that game. I had to get one in here just because I needed you to stay in the video. Just kidding. Last one, Void Fiend. He's so ugly. I love him. Every new ability here will also have a corrupted version, so yippee. Smother. Fire a slowing, short-range blast of void energy for 8 times 80% damage once every 0.5 seconds. When corrupted, double the amount of pellets fired and slow the fire rate to once every 0.8 seconds. The void energy is like a bunch of pellets, like a shotgun, and has a proc coefficient of 0.1 per pellet. This alternative would hit harder than Void Fiend's existing primary, but would be a lot harder to pull off successfully. I think the possibility of a 1280% damage while corrupted is pretty darn cool though. New secondary time! Swarm. Target an enemy and fire 3 homing missiles for 3 times 300% damage. When corrupted, the missiles become hit-scan beams and stun light enemies and deal 3 times 450% damage instead. Cooldown of 8 seconds. Homing missiles and the beams both have a proc coefficient of 0.5. I like this one because it's basically just Plasma Shrimp, but in his hand, and that's funny to me. On to the new utility, Intervene. Briefly slow time for 4 seconds and target a position within 20 meters. After a small animation, enter the void and teleport to that location. Using this ability gives you 20% corruption when uncorrupted. When corrupted, explode in a 30-meter radius upon teleporting for 600% damage. Cooldown of 10 seconds, and the explosion has a proc coefficient of 1. I really like this one. Void Fiend's current utility leaves a lot to be desired and is very awkward to use, so I think this offers for an easier and stronger alternative. And our final ability, Void Fiend's new special ability, Massacre. After a 2-second charge-up time, root yourself and explode in a 40-meter radius for 300% damage. This explosion applies 3 stacks of collapse and 50% slow to all enemies affected. When corrupted, reduce the charge time to 1 second, increase the explosion to 500% damage, and gain invulnerability for 2 seconds after the animation. Cooldown of 20 seconds. Explosion has a proc coefficient of 1. I think it just made sense to have a collapse-related ability on Void Fiend, so here it is. And so, we have made it to the end of our new ability list. But before we finish up here, I realized that a lot of abilities in the game require achievements to unlock them. I am way too lazy and refuse to do the work it would take to give achievement for every single one of these abilities, but I will do one per character for one of their new abilities. I'm going to sort of lightning round list them off here so we don't waste any more of your time, so here we go. For Commando's Advanced Training, no time to waste. Kill 20 enemies within 5 seconds. For Huntress's Explosive Arrow, you would have to do Please, Just Sit Still. Root or stun an enemy for a total of 8 seconds without killing them. For Bandit's Dagger Barrage, you would have to do For the Blood God. Kill 4 boss-type enemies with the Bleed debuff in a single run. For MUL-T's Reconstruct, you would have to do the whole 9 yards, apply 5 different debuffs to the final boss. That doesn't say at once, but I meant at once. For the TR-71 medic turret on Engineer, you would have to do just 1 more. Hold 25 bunkuses in your inventory in a single run. For Artificer's Overheat ability, you would have to do Scorched Earth, kill 100 enemies with the burn debuff in a single run. I wanted to make Mercenary's challenge really tough because I don't like him, so for his Grinding Assault ability, you would have to do Desperate Times, reach Rally Point Delta without taking any health damage. Damage to shields or temporary barrier do not count. For Rex's Seed Impact primary, we have Preemptive Photosynthesis. Heal 10,000 health in a single run. Healing while at maximum health will not count towards this total. For Loader's Employee Benefits, my favorite ability of hers is Get Down Here! Kill 10 airborne enemies consecutively without touching the ground. This would be really easy with the little black hole equipment. You just pull all the wisps together, punch them once, get it over with. For Acrid's Acid Pool primary, you would have Dirty Water. Kill 3 bosses in a single run with Acrid's Caustic Leap. So you'd have to do the finishing blow with just like the pool that it leaves on the ground. For Captain's OGM-72 Rapture Strike, you would have to do No One Gets Out Alive. Kill 50 Lemurians in a single environment. For Railgunner's Unorthodox Use Utility ability, you would have to do Can't Touch This. Stay airborne for 10 seconds using only the XQR Smart Round System. For those of you who don't know, it gives you slight knockback, so if you have fast enough attack speed, you can look straight down and basically hover as Railgunner. And finally, for Void Fiend's achievement, to unlock Massacre, you would have to do no more. Reach commencement without being corrupted. Gotta be a tough one, but you could do it. Maybe these would be too easy or too hard, but I don't really care. Some of these, and this is the same in the normal game, is you'd really have to grind some of these out, but for the others, you'd get in like your first game of playing. Point is, they're fun. Thank you so much for watching. I've been working on this video on and off for the past 2 months, so I'd very much appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed to the channel, as we are on the creep to 2,000 subscribers, which is crazy. Thank you so much. A gentle reminder that if you have any gripes with any of the abilities or achievements here, and say they are underpowered or overpowered, please be nice about your suggestions to change them. I very much want to hear them, but if you are mean about it, I will cry. Consider joining the Discord, and check me out on Twitch, because I sometimes stream. Thanks so much for watching and sticking out through the whole video, because, you know, that's a feat in itself. And bye-bye.